So since we're all sort of fellow fans here, I'm going to share with you things that maybe you guys probably already know, and maybe share some things that you don't know about the Halloween Haunt. So one thing just to kind of get started is, for those of you that don't know, Knott's Scary Farm is the longest running Halloween themed event at any theme park in the world. All others can trace their roots back to here at Knott's Berry Farm. So despite the various changes that Knott's Berry Farm has kind of gone through since the first haunt in 1973, shadows of its past still stand today. So as opposed to giving you like a play-by-play on how the haunt started and how it's grown over the years, I'm going to lead you to some historic hotspots right here in Ghost Town to help you understand why these seemingly random locations indeed have great relevance to the haunt's history. So, to get started, we're standing here in what is technically known as Main Street in Ghost Town. But after about the past 15 or so years in the monster community, this is referred to as Fog Alley. It's shrouded in fog. We all know what it looks like, right? With the spooky lighting and monsters lurking in the shadows. And to me, my personal opinion, this is the heart of Ghost Town when it comes to the Halloween Haunt. Now, during the event's debut, the Knott family created all sorts of types of entertainment to help establish this Halloween party concept. They had a host, Seymour, the Master of Macabre, who was a very famous television horror host at the time. He was in the theater. They had live monsters inside the Log Ride, Mine Ride. Every single store and food service location was decorated for Halloween. And they also set up kind of carnival-like sideshows right here in the midways of Ghost Town. But there was another important form of entertainment found in the midways of Ghost Town, especially that first year. And that was the Wild West stunt show personnel, the stunt performers, dressed as monsters to roam these streets. They were the very first Ghost Town monsters. So many, many years later, when I worked here as one of the Slider monsters, I worked right here in Ghost Town. And Ghost Town monsters have sort of the freedom to kind of roam wherever they want within the confines of the scare zone. But I wanted to work right here. I wanted to work right in the thick of the fog, and I wanted to walk the same steps as those first stunt personnel did back in 1973. I wanted to be among these really cool, eerie buildings. And these buildings, in fact, have great relevance to the haunt's history. So, for example, right here we have the barber shop, the laundry, the assay office. The displays inside these structures are known as Pecans, and they're sort of spread throughout Ghost Town. We've all seen them. But in the early days of the Halloween haunt, they were redecorated for the event and named Startling Pecans. We've got some pictures to show what they looked like back in the early days. They were spiffed up with spooky lighting, eerie sound effects, props. They put masks on the mannequins. But in the early days of the Startling Pecans, they had live monsters hidden inside to pop out and scare the unsuspecting.
Wow, nice.
Now, these Pecan monsters were not the same type of employees as the roaming stunt personnel that were dressed as monsters. The Pecan monsters were hired from outside of Knott's Berry Farm solely to work inside these things. And it was one of those monsters that played a very important role in the growth of the Halloween haunt. And his Pecan is right over there, and I'll take you there next. So this is the Sheriff's Office Pecan, and just as with all of the others, this was redecorated for the earlier Halloween haunts. It was in the Halloween haunt of 1977 that a very important event took place right here. The performer, the actor hired to work as a Pecan monster in here during that particular year was an actor named Bob Vernon. We have a photo of Bob right here, the way he looked in 1977.
That's
He showed
cool.
up to his first night at haunt that particular year without incident. He showed up to his second night that year, checked in, got into his costume, got into makeup. Guests are about to come into the park, and he comes to his Pecan, and just as it is now, the door was locked. Guests are now coming into the park, so in sort of this frantic rush, Bob tracks down his supervisor and says, "Hey, listen, guests are inside the park. I need to get into my Pecan." And so the supervisor races over here and is fumbling through key after key, and he doesn't have the right key. So the supervisor says in a really kind of nonchalant way, "Listen, Bob, it's going to take me some time to find the right key. So in the meantime, I don't know, why don't you just go out and scare these people?" And that's exactly what Bob did. However, he did so in a very aggressive manner. The guests were running, screaming, terrified. It was pandemonium right here. And after about 15 or so minutes of doing that, he looked over to this porch right here, and standing in the shadows were a couple of supervisors with their arms crossed. But they were smiling. They loved what Bob was doing. So much, in fact, that the very next haunt night, they pulled all of the Pecan monsters to work and scare aggressively like Bob was doing right here in Ghost Town. It set a new standard for Not Scary Farm. So no longer was it just the roaming stunt personnel dressed as monsters. Now people were hired from the outside to work and scare in Ghost Town. Every single scare zone monster at Not Scary Farm can trace their roots back to that 1977 haunt, to this Pecan, and to this locked door. So next, I'm going to share some information with you guys about a scare tactic that was created right here at Not Scary Farm, and I'll explain right over here. So we're standing here in front of Goldie's, and like I mentioned before, I used to work here as a monster. In fact, my wonderful assistant for today, Erica, she worked as a monster too with me in Ghost Town. We also worked in the swamp together, which is a now defunct scare zone. But back when we were working here in Ghost Town, Goldie's was sort of a hub for some of the top sliders that have ever scared at Not Scary Farm. Everybody knows what a slider is, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, sliding is a scare tactic that was created right here in Ghost Town back in the early to mid 1980s. We got some photos of these sliders.
That's cool.
Back before people were using the metal hands and the big knee pads, the first sliders slid right on their knees in cowboy boots without any gloves. After some nicks and bruises, they started wrapping their knees up with scare cloth and got some heavier gloves. And it wasn't until the late 1980s that a Camp Snoopy monster introduced the metal gloves and the skateboard knee pads. That performer's name is Todd Stutler, and in the monster community, he's sort of referred to as the godfather of sliding. This picture that we have here has Todd's character in the upper right-hand corner.
That's cool.
Sliding definitely existed before Todd came along, but he is sort of acknowledged as the creator of the modern era of sliding. For folks that haven't had an opportunity to kind of get an up-close look at some of their gear, we're handing around one of my old sliding gloves, so that way you guys can take a look and see, and pass it around. It helped me scare thousands of people here in Ghost Town. Yeah, you can just pass it around. Now, there's a common thread between the Bob Vernon Pecan story I told you about and these sliders. That common thread is that these scare elements were created by the monster performers themselves. It's not like there was some sort of upper management team in some boardroom saying, hey, let's have the monsters do these things. No, on the contrary, it was indeed the actors themselves that created these scare elements out of passion, intuition, and a desire to better the event. So there was definitely sliding before Todd, but he took it to a new level. There was definitely scaring before Bob Vernon, but he took it to a new level. So these are just a couple of small examples to help paint the picture that it has been a total group effort on making the haunt what it is today, that blood, sweat, and tears all coming together for that one common purpose. Now, sliding can be seen at Halloween events as far as Ocean Park, China, Busch Gardens, Hallow Screams in Tampa, Florida, Netherworld in Atlanta, Georgia. Sliding can be seen at Halloween events across the globe, and I'm here today to tell you that it all started at Not Scary Farm right here in Ghost Town by the actors themselves. So next, I'm going to take you to the location that housed the most gruesome item ever to appear at Not Scary Farm, and it's right over here. I kind of know it as the Crafts Barn, but I think it's called like the Toy Barn now or something. But it was originally the livery stable, and most people attending Halloween Haunt nowadays probably have no idea that this structure housed two extremely influential mazes during the 1979 and 1980 Halloween Haunts. Back in the late 70s, the mazes were created by in-house employees for Knott's Berry Farm. However, in an effort to bolster the production value of the mazes, the Knott family went to an outside design firm to create a maze for them. They found the father and son team of Doug and Don Williamson, who were designers for Pageant of the Masters. If you don't know what Pageant of the Masters is, it's a long time running show over in Laguna Beach. It's a live recreation of classic art pieces. So you can have like a Mona Lisa or a Rembrandt that's recreated with live actors and sets bringing the original art piece to life. So Doug and Don Williamson were set designers for Pageant of the Masters and hired by Knott's Berry Farm to design the 1979 maze Black Bart's Trail of Terror. We've got a photo of Black Bart's, and it was housed right in here. The maze was extremely big budget for the time. Tight, narrow walkways, cavern-like walls, live snakes and rats on display. They had video effects. They had skeletons that were dressed as cowboys, sets of jail cells and saloons, and even a full-blown real horse skeleton that was positioned to be pulling a buggy. But that's not what made this location so gruesome. In fact, despite its big budget, Black Bart's was not very scary. It looked neat, but it wasn't very scary. The Knott family were looking at the long lines over at the log ride and mine ride and knew that people wanted to be scared by the live monsters. So, not really satisfied with a spooky museum type of setting, they brought the designs back in-house with a fresh attitude, and the result was the 1980 maze, Tomb of Terror, which was also right here. This time they packed it full of maze monsters that aggressively scared people. But as great as those monsters may have been, they are not what was so gruesome. It was the item on display in the final room, a true, absolutely real, human mummified corpse named Count Demonicus. Now, Count Demonicus was on tour at the time in the carnival circuit and rented by Knott's Berry Farm to be the big finale of this 1980 Tomb of Terror maze. People flipped out when they saw Count Demonicus. People were scarred by seeing this real corpse, and it's certainly not something that you get away with doing nowadays. But however gruesome as Count Demonicus may have been, and as neat as the livery stable may have been as a maze location, it is not the most historic maze location here in Ghost Town. That honor goes to a structure right around the corner, and I'll take you there next. Standing here in front of the Wilderness Dance Hall, which was originally known as Jeffrey's Barn. This structure marks the most significant maze location in the entire history of Halloween Haunt. Now, some of the most popular haunt mazes ever have been housed inside this building. The first was 1980's Dr. Alucard's Chamber of Horrors, which Alucard spelled backwards as Dracula, so you can kind of get an idea of the theme. 1981 was the big budget Realm of Darkness, which was a medieval type of theme with castle-like walls, dungeons, and fantasy-like characters. We got some photos of some of these mazes. And in late 1980s, one of the most famous haunt mazes ever was housed inside here, Bates Motel, which was sort of a twisted nod to the movie Psycho. But then about halfway through the maze, it started turning into this surreal kind of hodgepodge of classic haunted house elements like the polka dot room, the checkered room, the strobe room, that type of thing. Very successful, very popular. And then in the 90s, mazes such as Mother Noose's Scary Tales and Ghost Town Bed and Breakfast were here. And then more recently, Hatchet High, Doll Factory, and of course now we've got Pinocchio and Strung up here. And as great as all these mazes have been, all of them combined do not add up as to why this structure is the most significant maze location in all of Halloween Haunt's history. The reason is right around back, and I'll take you over there now. Well, back before Bigfoot Rapids was here, this was an employee parking lot. The park just ended right here. And it was in the summer of 1982 that there was a summer show placed back here, which would have been backstage, named Colonel Howe's Traveling Circus. They had a big top circus with circus performers. And at the end of the summer, the circus performers left. The big top stayed and ended up housing one of the most innovative mazes in haunt's history, 1982's The Terrifying Trail of Jack the Ripper. We've got a picture of the cast right there. It was 5,000 square feet, 2, 3, 4-story high building facades were created, complete sewer systems with running water were created to replicate the London sewers. They had cutting-edge sound effects, video effects. They even utilized Peter Poy's flying effects, which is the same apparatus used by Broadway performers to make characters like Peter Pan fly across the stage. The maze was very important in the growth of the Halloween Haunt because it set a new standard in the production value of these mazes. Every maze from that point on needed to be as good or better than Jack the Ripper, which leads us to the mazes that we see today that are filled with cutting-edge technology that bring them to life. that as great as Jack the Ripper was, that's still not why this location is so important. It was in 1977 that direction came from Mary and Knott herself to create a new attraction for this rapidly growing Halloween haunt. The lines were astronomical for the log ride and the mine ride and the theater. She knew that Knott's needed to do something to help alleviate those long lines. And the result was the first maze ever constructed solely for the Halloween haunt. 1977 is the 10 chilling chambers, and we are all standing right where that maze was located. It was not inside the dance hall, it wrapped around the dance hall. It started off in Boot Hill, went across a bridge that's no longer there anymore, along the railroad tracks right to where we are now, and then exited out by the schoolhouse. The maze was an immediate smash hit. It set a new standard for Run Scary Pumpkins. Every year they create all of these mazes. Every Halloween event in the world, especially a Halloween theme park that has some sort of maze, can trace their roots back to that 1977 10 Chilling Chambers maze. And that's why this area is so important and relevant, because without that maze, who knows where this event would be today. So please know that there's hundreds of little historic hotspots spread through this entire park, like those I've shared with you today, that are related to the Halloween haunt, from Camp Snoopy, the Fiesta Village, to Boardwalk.
We have time, Dad, if you want to.
Yeah, we can all hang out together. Just do this. And you guys know all this stuff too, you know, and have your own stories. So hopefully now when you guys attend the Halloween haunt, you have a better appreciation for its historic legacy. Now you know that maybe not every haunt shadow contains a monster, but perhaps one of these historic hotspots. So this sort of concludes our ghost town portion of the tour. You can head over to the Haunt Museum and I can answer any questions that you guys might have. You can check out the exhibits. We have a small little goodie for each one of you guys that signed up for this. And if you don't already have Knott's Halloween Haunt, a picture history book, now's the time to get it. It's almost out of print. Well, it's almost out of print, and so get it while you can if you don't already have it. So let's head on over. So who can I make it out to?
Sean and Carmel, S-H-A-W-N, and then Carmel is C-A-R-M-E-L-L-E. Thank you very much.
Today's the 4th.
It is, yes.